People of the internet, RetroRaconteur here. I'm just a dad who loves games and the stories they tell. And today I'll be going through my top 10 beginner tips for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And I want to stress here, these are beginner tips. This would be really great for people who maybe never played Breath of the Wild, or maybe people who it's been a long time since you played Breath of the Wild and you need a bit of a refresher on it. This video is for you. The first area of the game where you start your adventure essentially serves as the game's tutorial. And while I'm sure you'll be ready to get to the main part of the game, you should definitely take your time here. Tears of the Kingdom, even though it's a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild and contains some of the same gameplay elements, it also introduces quite a few new mechanics. There are so many menus and items to understand, as well as a pretty complex control scheme that fortunately has been improved from the first game. So when you're on this Sky Island, I would really take the time to familiarize yourself with the controls to understand the basics while you only have a few items in your inventory, because trust me, it will not take long before you have a menu that looks like this. There are a few options in the menu I want to call your attention to as well. The first is the camera sensitivity. I found the default setting way too low, and even the high setting wasn't snappy enough for me, so I turned this all the way up and it feels much better now. You also have the option to completely disable the HUD if you want that more immersive feel. There's a setting for gyro aiming. It is enabled by default, and I have to say it feels really good. This certainly isn't anything new, and games have been doing this for a while now, but frankly, I've never been a huge fan. Here though, I actually find myself using it often. And if you're not familiar with this, it's just a very subtle tilt of your controller regardless of which Switch controller you're using when you're aiming with the bow, and it's actually going to allow you to sort of pinpoint. I still use the right stick to sort of set the shot up, but then I do use the gyro for that sort of pinpoint accuracy to be a little bit more precise. And lastly, I prefer B to jump and X for sprint, so I enable this option right here. But this one is purely what you find the most comfortable. You'll also want to make sure you really read carefully anytime the game explains a mechanic to you. I know for a lot of people there can be a tendency to skip through tutorial menus quickly. Don't do that here. Again, because of all the controls, all of these abilities, all of these items, it's going to be really important that you understand sort of the baseline, the foundation, and this beginning area, that's really the sole purpose of it, is to teach you all of those basics again. All right, number 2, this tutorial area is also going to be a great place for you to familiarize yourself with how weapons work in Tears of the Kingdom. Yes, they do still break down like in Breath of the Wild, but there's a pretty significant change here this time, and it all comes down to the fuse ability. So if you're completely new with Tears of the Kingdom, here's basically how it works. You do not get just the Master Sword, and that's your only weapon throughout the game. In Breath of the Wild and now in Tears of the Kingdom, you can find weapons all over the map from all different types of enemies, and then you can use those weapons in battle. And then some would say, unfortunately, Nintendo has implemented a system where these weapons will break down over time, and they can actually break down even faster if you're using them in the wrong way. So let's say you're trying to use a weapon like a spear to do your mining. That is going to make the spear break down much faster than if you use something like a blunt weapon that is much better for the mining. Now, I will say I was not a huge fan of this breaking down mechanic the first time in Breath of the Wild. I eventually got used to it, but so far in Tears of the Kingdom, I'm okay with it, and it really all comes down to that fuse ability. I mean, it truly is a game changer. There are so many different items in Tears of the Kingdom that can be fused to give a weapon more properties or make it significantly more powerful. You'll want to really familiarize yourself with which weapons in your inventory require two-handing, because while these usually have stronger attacks, you'll lose the ability to hold up your shield whenever you're using them. And again, because of fuse, shields offer more utility and even more attack power than ever before thanks to some of the items that you can fuse to your shield. Don't be afraid to experiment and get creative here. Bows make a return, and again, thanks to the fuse mechanic, they are more powerful here. You can fuse Keith's eyeballs to give them the ability to home in on the nearest target, bomb flowers for a big explosion, and so much more. Also, don't forget about your abilities in combat, because there are clever ways that you can use them in battle as well. Now, there are some pretty tough enemies that you'll encounter in Tears of the Kingdom. You'll be cruising along thinking, hey, these mobs aren't too challenging, and then out of nowhere, you'll run into an enemy that far outmatches your current abilities. As a result of this, it's going to be very important that you learn how to manage your health in battle, which, love it or hate it, means you'll need to get used to cooking and making a habit of doing it regularly. One of the big changes Breath of the Wild made when comparing to previous Zelda games is that you don't find hearts to refill your health out in the world. The primary way that you'll hear in Tears, especially early game, is by cooking dishes and then eating those dishes when your hearts are low. Now yes, there are other ways to heal, like fairies and resting at stables, but eating meals is something you're going to need to remember throughout the entirety of the game, as it's a great way to heal in the middle of fights. And here's an area where Zelda is quite a bit more forgiving than a lot of modern action RPGs like, say, Elden Ring, because you can actually pause in the middle of these fights. I mean, you can be down to your last heart, milliseconds away from getting hit. But if you pause the game, you can eat one of your dishes to restore your health. I mean, you could be falling from the sky, you can be climbing, doesn't matter. As long as you can pause the game, you can eat your meal. Now, by discovering certain recipes, you'll even be able to make meals that give you higher attack power, more stamina, etc. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All right, now, all of that being said, death is actually not too punishing in Tears of the Kingdom, at least in most situations. Don't get me wrong, there's some situations later in the game where you definitely don't want to die. But like right here, for example, especially when it comes to items. So this is early in the game again, but let's just say that I waste, I don't know, a couple of these, bomb flowers. Bomb flowers are actually pretty hard to come by, at least early in the game. So let's say I fuse one of these and I shoot it over there. So that takes me down to 8. Then I have 7. Let's go ahead and shoot one over here. And then let's say that I accidentally, because I don't think this guy will even be able to take us out. So let's say that we accidentally get too close, fire it in, and look at that. So in a lot of games, we would restart. We'd be pretty far from where we were, and we would lose all of those bomb flowers. That is actually not how it works in Tears of the Kingdom. The vast majority of the time, you will start almost right back exactly where you were. And here's the really good news, guys. Look at our inventory here. Let's go back to the front. And there you can see I'm right back up to 8 bomb flowers. So don't be too afraid of death in the game, especially early, because far more often than not, you're going to start very close to where you were, and you really won't have lost anything. You'll get all your items back. So that is a really nice quality of life, I guess, feature that makes it a little bit less difficult than it otherwise would be. And that also leads us right into our next tip here, which is don't be afraid to experiment and explore. If I had to give you a single piece of advice, that one would probably rank out above all others, because this game, more than any game that I've ever played, I mean, maybe aside from something like Minecraft, I can't think of any other game that rewards you for experimentation quite like The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom does. Let me show you this clip right here. So this is me taking a shield and fusing it to a minecart. And yes, all the properties that you think would happen after you fuse it, they absolutely happen here. So remember shield surfing from the first game? If you didn't, it was totally a thing. Whenever you went downhill, you could jump on your shield and surf, and it actually worked out pretty well. A lot of times it was a fast way to get around. This takes it a step further. I mean, you can see how fast I'm going down this hill right here. And then the other big area where I would say don't be afraid to experiment, in fact, it is strongly, strongly encouraged, is with all of your new abilities. I mean, you could see this enemy right here. Moments ago, he actually fused one of these barrels with his sword over there. So if you look at all these objects here in the area, if I pull out fuse right here, now it's not going to let me right now because this soldier reaper has already been fused with an item. Oh, he fused a tree branch. Is that a bow and arrow? No way. It is. He fused a tree branch to the bow and arrow. That is great. Okay, the old wooden bow broadsword. That is the one that he fused together. So you can see if I switch to that right here. Let me go ahead and cancel out. You can see that the bow is on the end of this sword right now, which is just hilarious. I don't even think it will increase it. Yeah, it doesn't look like it increases the damage of it at all. So what I can do is I can go into the menu here. Let me go over to my weapons and find that one right here. And I'm just going to press A, and then we can say destroy fused material. So it's not going to, oh, it actually did up it by 1, but not much. But what I don't have is the fused material. So the bow and arrow that was fused to this, you lose that. That goes away. However, now I can go over here, and if I wanted to do something crazy like he just did, I could fuse it to this construct bow. I could fuse it to, where did that construct horn go? I think we picked it up by accident. We could fuse it to something like this log right here. We could fuse it to these boards over here, to the Zonite charge, to the rusty shield. The game will let you experiment, and it encourages you to experiment. Now, having played for a little bit, I know that there's not really any of these items that I want to fuse it to, except for maybe that soldier construct horn right there. But if I just press up on the D-pad here, we can cycle through all of these items here, and I'm not going to show you some of the ones that I've gotten here more recently because they're a little bit more powerful than what you might be getting right now. But especially in the beginning of the game, you're going to come across things like this, the bokoblin horn right here. So if I drop that, and then you can see my sword right now is at level 5. So if I go into the fuse menu right here, fuse it to my sword, look at that. It increased it by 4. And it even has a visual change as well. You'll actually see it on your sword there. So now we're at a 9 attack power on this weapon. Now, when it comes to experimenting and exploring, I encourage this right from the beginning of the game with one exception. I think you should progress the game at least until the point where you get this item right here, the one that you see me using now, the paraglider. It doesn't take long. Stick to the story missions, the main quest, and very quickly, within a few hours, you're going to have this paraglider, which just makes such a huge difference for traversing the world. So that is my next tip, is progress the story until you get the paraglider. Get it early, and I'm going to show you a little extra special tip here with the glider. So your stamina bar, we're going to talk more about stamina here in a second, but stamina plays a big role when you're gliding here. So you can see that green meter depleting, and I'm just going to let it run out here. So we're just going to fly, and you may find yourself in this situation a lot because there is so much to see and do in this game. Like, look at all those sky islands up there. You may find yourself jumping from one sky island, trying to glide over to another, and realizing, oh, it was actually much farther than I realized, and then you're not able to make it. So right here, look at that. My stamina ran out. Now, I'm going to pause the game just for a second here. You can see Link's exhausted because he's out of stamina. But what's important to know here is you still have one more very brief glide. It's very quick, but as long as you activate it right before you hit the ground, then you're going to be fine. The only other way I could survive is if we fell into water, which looks like there is a little bit of water nearby, but it's just too far away. We're not going to make it. So I'm going to wait till right about there, pull the glider, and then Link falls. No harm done. And then his stamina refills, and we're ready to go again. And that actually leads us perfectly into our 7th tip here, which is managing your stamina. We talked a little bit earlier about health. Stamina is a little bit different. So it's not like some other games like Elden Ring, where if you spam attack in Elden Ring, you're eventually going to run out and you have to wait. Otherwise, you can't attack. It refills pretty quickly there. But here, it only applies to 3 things. It applies when I'm running. So right here, you see me take off into a sprint. There goes my green meter slowly depleting. Now, as long as I stop before it fully depletes, Link doesn't really have any sort of side effects other than, I have to stop running for a moment here. Also, as you guys just saw earlier, it affects when he's gliding as well. So you can see I'm gliding right there. Whenever you're hopping off these little small hills and mountains, you're not going to really run into much trouble with that. However, if you're jumping off a sky island like you just saw me do, or a really tall mountain like the one over there, then you absolutely will run into that being an issue. The other spot where it comes into play is swimming. So where the water is really an issue with stamina is if you're trying to cross a large body of water. Now, I will say this game, you don't always have to resort to swimming. Where you could run into some trouble, though, is if you jump. So let's say, I'm not going to be able to really demonstrate it from right here, but if I kind of glide in and then I land in the water, you see my stamina doesn't refill right there. So if you're hitting the water and you're thinking I can just glide down into this large body of water and have very little stamina left, you're going to be in trouble when you do that because you're going to hit the water, have very little stamina left, and then you're just going to drown and you're going to die right there. Now, the other thing about stamina that is very forgiving, and I've stopped it right here on purpose, if you just stop, your stamina will not go anywhere. So I have to make a decision right now. What do I want to do here? Do I want to drop down? Because I could go ahead and go down a little bit, and that's going to help me not take as much fall damage. I don't think I would take any from here, but it'd be pretty close, right? We're sort of on the verge of where we would take fall damage. I definitely can't make it to the top, so that's out of the question. However, very much like health, I can pause right in the middle of this. You can do this when gliding, you can do this when swimming, you can do this when climbing. And if you go over to your cooking and the dishes that you've made, you'll want to look for these that have a little green ring. So anything that will increase your stamina. So it just so happens I need to heal a few hearts right now too, so this is actually perfect. Energizing Mushroom Skewer right here instantly refills some of your stamina wheel. So it will go right away. Not very realistic, but it's very nice as a gameplay feature. So if I eat this right now, even though I am currently hanging on the side of this cliff here, and then we go back in, look at that. My stamina just refilled by a little bit. Now, I definitely don't want to dash, because if I dash and do that little extra jump, I'm not going to have enough. But there you can see, by eating that, not only did I refill my hearts, I refilled my stamina just enough for me to make it to the top of the cliff now. And I didn't mention this when we were talking about health, so I'll mention it here. You can increase your stamina and your hearts. The way that you'll increase these is by completing the shrines in the game. You complete these shrines, you get a spirit orb. Once you have 4, you go to one of these little prayer altars. There's one that you'll find very early in the game just by progressing the story. You pray in front of these little statues, and then you get a choice of whether you want to add a heart or add a little bit of stamina. And that is totally up to you. You can go back and forth. You can go all stamina for a while and then go to hearts, vice versa. I usually find I'm more of a heart guy. I like to really build up my health first, but for whatever reason in Tears of the Kingdom, I've found myself exploring so much that I really want more stamina. So I've actually been prioritizing that a bit more here in the early going. All right, for our next tip, let's talk about the map, because Tears of the Kingdom is such a massive game. I mean, I'm only scratching the surface of all this game has to offer at this point. Now, right now, I'm still showing you guys the starting area. I don't want to give away too much. We're not going to spoil major parts of the game for you here. However, it is going to be very important that you get used to how to use the map as well as placing markers throughout the world. So if I click in my right analog stick right now, it's going to pull out the scope here. And you can see at the very bottom, we have, what is that, 6 little indicators for where we can place what I call a light beacon. So if I point this right over here, that is a shrine. That shrine is one that I've already completed, so that's why it doesn't have the little swirly stuff on it. But let's just say it did have the swirly stuff, and you're all the way over here, and you think, okay, I see the shrine there, but there's no way I can do anything with it right now. You can pull out your scope right here. You can push A to place that marker down. Now, if I go into my map, look at that. It actually shows up as the little red light beacon right there. Now, just remember, if you had not yet discovered this shrine, then it's not going to even show up here like it is for me. The red beacon, though, would show up regardless. And so what you could do here is you could go in, select that pin, and you can edit it. And you're going to need to come up with some sort of system, whatever works best for you, because you only have 6 of these. These, however, you get 300, so you can place a lot of these out in the world. Now, there are some advantages to having the light beacons, though. They will actually show up on your mini-map. So you see down there in the bottom right, my mini-map, I have the yellow one. It's kind of facing me directly right there. We've got a purple one there, and then we've got the red one there. The yellow circle, that is our next main mission that we have marked right now, our active quest. So if I zoom in right there again, I also can see the light beacon right there. However, let's say I go in, and I'm going to zoom out here a little bit, and we're going to change this. We're going to change this from the light beacon. We're going to edit pin, and this is what I've been using for shrines right here, this little diamond. So when I place the diamond, that does not show up on my minimap, and I also do not get a light beacon for it. So the light beacons are really best for something that you want to find kind of right then. It's not something that you want to put off, and you can do up to 6 of them, so I mean, you don't have to do them all right then, but the great benefit there is that you can place something anywhere in the world, and then you're going to see it whenever you zoom in with the scope, but also in the minimap on the right-hand side. Moving on to tip number 9 here, fast travel. Tears of the Kingdom, very much like Breath of the Wild, has an incredibly generous fast travel system. Anything that you see right now that's blue on my map, you can fast travel to. Now, what are all these blue indicators? The majority of them are shrines. So this one right here you can see is a shrine. This one here is a shrine, which it's also reminding me I need to go in and delete these stamps now that I've already discovered the shrine. Also, you will find these Skyview towers throughout the world as well. These are really handy. I'm actually at one of these right now. So I'm going to go ahead and hit examine here. It's going to take me to the top. When you fly up in the air like this gives you your best vantage point that you will have in the game. I mean, it just takes you incredibly high up. And here's the crazy thing. So whenever you're flying like this, you can also press R3 to pull out that scope again, and it puts you into a very slow mode. It doesn't completely stop things. You can see those creatures are still flying there, but it is very slow, and there's no time limit on this. I mean, I'm sure you would eventually hit the ground at some point, but like there's a shrine over there. That one's got the little swirly, so that means I have not discovered it yet. Let's go ahead and mark it with a beacon. I can pull out my map right now, see, oh, it's actually quite a bit further than I realized. Let's go ahead and edit the pin, give it a little diamond, and we're good to go. Now, in terms of all of these things that you can fast travel to, these Skyview towers, they're great because you can have that high vantage point. But anytime you see a shrine that you happen to be close to, I actually haven't explored this area much yet, so let me see if I can find one that's close by. Even if you don't plan on doing the shrine, actually that's perfect right there. There's one right there. You can see the little swirl. Now for this one, I'm actually going to put the light beacon. So let's put that down so we can see that. And then I'm just going to try and fly straight to it. Because right now, I don't really have anywhere, basically anything east of this Skyview tower right here, I have no fast travel point right now. But if I go and fly here, I don't even have to do this shrine right now. If I just fly here, discover the shrine, then it instantly opens that up as a fast travel point for us. So let's see if I can glide. I think I should have just enough here to make it. Okay, so here we are. So see, we discovered the shrine right there. All right, now I'm going to show you what happens. We haven't went up and activated it yet. So see how it has this gold color to it? So I could not fast travel to it just by getting close right there. However, all you have to do is walk up, hit examine. Link will put out his hand, as you're probably familiar with by this point. He'll open up the shrine, but then notice the game does not immediately force you in just because you open it. However, I have now unlocked this shrine. So I haven't completed it, but now it is unlocked as a fast travel point. So I could go all the way back. Let's say we want to go all the way to right where we started. All right, so now we're all the way back over here in the Hyrule field, but if I pull out the map again, now this point is open as a fast travel point. For our next and final tip here, Oh wait, what is this right here? Let me examine this. This is actually perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to show you guys, because in this game, one of the things that Zelda games have just always been so good at is making the worlds feel alive. I mean, every character feels like they have their own story, their own little path that they follow, right? So in Tears of the Kingdom, it is very important that you talk to people, you interact with them, and you always, always, always look for the red text. I mean, they make it pretty obvious, right? But anytime you see the red text, that is just something you need to pay attention to. Far more often than not, it's going to lead to some type of quest, or it's something that you really need to make sure that you know. So right here, Link makes ready use of the jump slash, leaping into the air and swinging his weapon down with a practiced ease. All crew members should be diligent in their daily training and aspire toward that level of mastery, Captain Haas. And then right there, you get the little prompt. Press Y in midair, and you will do the jump slash. So now let's go ahead and let me switch to something where it will be really obvious. This weapon right here should be good, the Soldier Reaper. So we jump, slash, there you go. That's the jump slash. It isn't safe here. All right, and then we have red text. Captain Haas's squad of the monster control crew is going to engage the monsters around here soon. I bet you by now they're already locked in combat with the monsters at the lair to the south. The game is just littered with things like this. Also, anytime you see an exclamation point above someone's head, definitely make the time to talk to that person. But honestly, even more than the quest, this is what makes this game feel so alive. This is something that Zelda games have always been so good at, is just making this world really come to life. Now, I would love to hear from new Zelda players to see what other questions you guys still have about Tears of the Kingdom. So comment below, ask away. If we get enough questions, I'll go back and try to answer them in a future video. And if you'd like to see me play through Tears of the Kingdom, I've been uploading my playthroughs over on our Let's Play channel, so you can check that video out on the right side of your screen now. That's episode 1. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.